50-plus years of clinical experience show repeatedly that, despite your best intentions, talking about your relationship has more of a chance of making it worse than making it better. And it has nothing to do with your partner's lack of interest or poor communication skills. Women want to talk about the relationship because they're upset and want to feel better. Men don't want to talk because talking won't make them feel better. In fact, it will make them feel worse. So whether she forces him to talk or not, they both end up feeling disappointed and disconnected. This loneliness of disconnection lies at the heart of every argument or cold silence, fueling your disappointment or resentment. It also leads to the distance that can ultimately tear your relationship apart. We believe the chronic stress of disconnection, which eventually afflicts most unions between men and women, stems from a slight difference in the way the sexes experience fear and shame, a difference that is observable shortly after birth. This subtle difference is inherent in the question, do we talk about the relationship or not? The real reason the woman wants to talk about it, beneath the resentment and frustration, is that disconnection makes her feel anxious and, on a deeper level, isolated and afraid. The real reason the man doesn't want to talk about the relationship is that her dissatisfaction with him makes him feel like a failure. On a deeper level, he feels ashamed. His shame is too great to allow him to understand her fear, and her fear keeps her from seeing his shame. When they try to alleviate their feelings of vulnerability in opposite ways, by talking and not talking, all they end up sharing are disappointment and heartache. Your relationship can fail with neither of you doing anything wrong if you do not understand the extent to which fear and shame drive your disconnection from each other. Understanding each other's core vulnerabilities and learning how to manage them will give you a new perspective on your relationship, a dual perspective based on both points of view that leads to compassionate connection and love beyond words. Part 1 of this book will show how fear and shame have kept you both from getting what you most want out of your lives together. Part 2 will show you how to use your fear and shame to love each other more deeply than ever before, without asking your partner to make even one change. And you can do all this in just 4 3/4 minutes per day, without ever talking about your relationship. You'll be able to do it because you both want it. He wants a close and loving relationship, too. Believe it or not, research and clinical experience show that the majority of men, including those who ignore or take their partners for granted, want a closer and deeper emotional connection just as much as women do. For the most part, men regard their partners as their best friends, closest confidants, and the most important people in their lives. And despite stereotypes about roving eyes and midlife crises, most men are satisfied with their partners' appearances. In fact, the majority do not want the women in their lives to change in any significant way. Research and clinical experience also tell us that marriage and committed love relationships are more important to the health and well-being of men than women. Divorced men do not work as well or live as long or survive with anything like the quality of life enjoyed by married men. They are at considerably higher risk of alcoholism, suicide, physical and mental illness, unemployment, and car crashes or other accidents. They lose contact with friends, stop going to church or social groups, and eventually isolate themselves completely, except for whatever company they can find in a bar. In short, they lose meaning and purpose. Without a partner, men just go through the motions of living. If the research is right, and our clinical experience tells us that it is dead right, men and women clearly want the same closeness and connection from a relationship. So why do most of us end up like Marlene and Mark? Marlene feels emotionally disconnected from her husband. She's not quite sure when it happened, but it feels like a chilly wall has risen between them. At first it was a quiet resentment, then frequent irritability, and lately they've begun fighting. The very things they used to love about each other, they now criticize. Before they got married, Marlene bragged to all her friends how she could relax with Mark and his wonderfully mellow personality.